Welcome once again to Cinemaholics, the major motion podcast, where we talk about the biggest and best films coming to theaters and streaming down the race line, car track, I guess. From the San Francisco Bay Area, I'm John Negroni, film editor for InBetweenDrafts.com. And from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, he's a freelance film writer, and maybe one day, he'll get to be in a competition where he directs movies because he's been a film critic, and it's not a game. But he'll be able to do it for real. It's Will Ashton.
You die in the game, you die for real.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, that would be a kind of fun challenge for like a reality TV show. If you got whatever, like 10 to 12 film critics.
I guess so.
Got them all together, narrowed it down to like one, see what happens. They get to make a movie. It's a huge flop. Critics are harsh on it. And then that show would be Project Greenlight.
We were talking just yesterday in a group chat, one of the group chats, about which directors we think we would be like if we were directors. Like if you had to, do like a little fusion dance with one or two. And what was yours again? Like Linklater and who else? Not Spike Jonze.
I said I'd probably be a mix of like the Coens and Richard Linklater, though I'm wondering if you're teeing this up for a Neill Blomkamp discussion of some sort.
So this week we're talking about Gran Turismo. And I think next week, are we going to talk about Bottoms? Remind me if that's going to be in your area in time.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm fully banking on us talking about Bottoms next week. I'm very excited.
Great. Yep. I know you're excited because, I think you were a little bit not sure. Like, okay, is Bottoms going to be the movie for me? Am I going to be the top to the bottom? Am I going to love it top to bottoms? And I watched the movie and I told you Bottoms ain't it. And you got even more excited. You were like, wait, hold on, slow down. That means if it's a comedy and John didn't find it very good, we're in business.
Yep.
This is one of the biggest discrepancies I've had with like the broader critical community in a while, because this movie is like getting just overwhelming praise, and I found it to be just not a very great movie at all. So that should be a fun conversation. Maybe you'll be able to talk some sense into me. Show me the error of my ways, or the other way around. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen the film, so I don't have an opinion on it. But yeah, I mean, literally as of this time, and I'm sure it's going to change because, if a movie gets too well liked, obviously there's going to be some dissenting opinion at some point. But as of now, you are the only person I know, critic or otherwise, that has not liked the film.
I have my reasons. I'll do my best. And it's one of those things where it's like, I don't like not liking it. Right? I was stoked for this movie. I love the trailer, but yeah. It was a bit of a bummer for me walking out, and I'm walking out, and people are just like, "Man, what a movie!" And I'm like, "Yeah, all right, okay."
Yeah, no, I'm excited though. I really want this to be the comedy I love, the R-rated comedy I love from the summer, because I feel like I've been let down at least a few times already. So I'm hoping for the best.
So we're gonna talk Gran Turismo now. So I saw this a while back, I still remember it, but yeah, I haven't. It came out just this past weekend. They screened it for critics really early. I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe because it did have some kind of like premiere at the end of July, and then
no. The reason was it was supposed to come out earlier in the month, like that first or second week of August, and then the writer and actor strike was happening, and they were afraid that they weren't able to promote the movie. So what they did was they pushed it to the end of the month, or closer to the end of the month, and try to do word of mouth screenings around the time it was supposed to come out, and then the subsequent week to follow. And that's been their approach. So it's just been the reason you got such an early screening is that it would have been more time appropriate to the original release of the film.
That makes sense. Yeah, because I remember the original poster had it for August 11th, and so I just kind of thought like, oh, maybe it's like an international thing, and I wasn't quite sure, but I don't know if that strategy totally worked. I mean, I think it made some money, and that's like it's made 55 million worldwide. I mean, that's not a lot, but I mean, it's a pretty low budget kind of thing. So I don't know how it's going to shake out in terms of was this thing worth the investment? I don't know. This is the latest in the like PlayStation Studios releases. We've gotten a couple of these so far. So we got what was it? We got the Uncharted movie, which I liked, and you don't remember at all. And then we got The Last of Us, which HBO series through PlayStation Productions, and Last of Us widely celebrated. I very much enjoyed that show, that series with Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey, and that one actually kind of broke through the pop culture noise. I mean, that was definitely like a big hit of a show. And then Gran Turismo was like completely unlike these other two things. Like those are like adaptations of video games. But Gran Turismo is not an adaptation of a video game in nearly the same way. It's essentially telling the true story. It's based on a true story, very loosely, but
Hold on.
Yeah.
Are you telling me this is based on a true story?
Calm down, Will.
I know. The reason I'm saying that is because the trailer says that I think at least 3 times. Yeah. And then when you, at least at the AMC I went to, when you get a ticket for it, it says Gran Turismo : based on a true story. And then as soon as the movie starts, I don't even know if it was before or immediately after the title card came up. It was like based on a true story, as if people were just unable to fathom this. Like you're like, hold on. This Gran
Turismo brand is so powerful. Right. People are like, well, it's not based on a true story.
Right.
But then the movie is like, where is it?
I thought it was because people were going to confuse this with Gran Torino. And they're like, well, we already got that movie. That's based on like Clint Eastwood doing things. Like, no. This is based on a true story.
What are you talking about? Like, I see the car right there.
Right. Yeah. But no, yeah. I mean, I don't think I've had any real relationship to the game of Gran Turismo. I know, big shock. But I thought initially I did. But then I realized I think I was confusing it with Burnout. Do you remember that game series?
I played Burnout a lot.
Yeah.
Very, very different game. Because Gran Turismo, like they said in this is more, it's trying to be realistic. They call it a simulator because marketing. But, Burnout was like the business. Because that one you could like make these huge like explosions, car crashes, get all that pent up 13-year-old middle school energy out.
Yeah.
At a sleepover.
Right. But then I also had a similar experience when Need for Speed came out, the movie version. Because I was like, I remember playing these games. And I realized it was also Burnout. So what I'm asking here is why haven't we gotten a Burnout movie?
Like, I feel like have the budget for that.
I mean,
you remember those games were pretty high fidelity in terms of like the physics of destruction. I feel like it'd be a CGI fest.
Do you think it would be any different though than like the most recent Fast and Furious movies?
I think so. Just because Burnout. I don't remember Burnout being much of a racing game. I remember the whole thing with that game was like you were trying to create crashes. Like you were doing like speed tests and things like that. It didn't have much of a, I don't know. Like I feel like with racing, you have a story here. Gran Turismo, you couldn't have just made that like do the Need for Speed thing, because Gran Turismo, like I think this is the best way to adapt the game by sort of using the game mechanics to, like with something that really happened and playing into that and doing like a meta narrative. So the story of this, and you're right. In some countries, it's literally subtitled Gran Turismo based on a true story. Because they really wanted. They're worried. Like they're like, if people don't know this, that's that. This is Neill Blomkamp, who we're going to talk about in a second, I'm sure. And Gran Turismo is about this real life person named Jann Mardenborough. So in like the early 20-teens, just like in this movie, he is this very obsessive Gran Turismo player, like very good at the game. He went to this thing called GT Academy. A lot of the other characters in this movie, like the Orlando Bloom character, the David Harbour character, they are fictionalized. I think the Orlando Bloom character he's kind of based on a real person, but not really. David Harbour is kind of like a, what do they call those? Like a composite or a conglomeration of different real life people. There's a term for it.
Yeah. Like a composite, I think is a good term. I mean,
something like that.
I was wondering, I meant to look it up after the fact, but I don't know how much this is quote unquote based on a true story. Like obviously, like you said, this guy is real and he had kind of an incredible, rise from being a gamer to racer, as the marketing likes to note. But I wasn't 100% sure how much of this, ironically was actually based on a true story and how much of this was heavily, liberated or, fabricated to. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I was looking kind of into it, and I mean they fudge a lot of things for the sake of it. But there are a lot of beats in this that really did happen. The Le Mans race, so you got your little Ford v Ferrari tidbit there. There's a scene involving a pretty major car crash. We won't give away the details of that, but that did happen. Like the consequences of that. So a lot of these things did happen. But they really fudge like the timeline, how long some of these things took, the order of events. I think a lot of basically almost all of like the family stuff is totally different, just in terms of like the drama of everything, because they had a screenplay to write. This is Jason Hall and Zach Baylin, and they just kind of like adapted the sort of like the stuff that was real into the the basic structure of a Hollywood movie. So there you go. Now I didn't know that this was good. Like that was the hook of this movie for a while, until I think it was like one of the first teasers came out. And I looked into it a little bit. I didn't watch the teaser at that point, but I was like, oh, okay, I kind of get this. Like you are finding a way to use the game mechanics. Like when they're racing with these cars, you see like they play with it a bit. Like all of a sudden it's kind of like you're playing the game, and the story kind of leans into like that type of like storytelling of like, oh, he's playing it, he's trying to do this in real life, like he would play the game, but he has to learn how to do this. And that stuff is very interesting to me, just as a gamer, and like that's creative. Like that's a way to sort of like that's a different way to start adapting games moving forward. I mean, obviously they can't do this for everything that comes out, but I like that they were, I don't know, thinking outside the box a bit more. But at the same time, this is a movie they've been talking about making for years. Ever since I think like 2015, when this stuff originally was happening. They were like, we should make this kind of movie. And I think Joseph Kosinski was set to direct it a long time ago.
Oh,
yeah.
And I think a lot more sense. Yeah.
I think what opened the floodgates was sort of like movies started coming out where like video game movies that didn't feel as cursed. Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Detective Pikachu. We now have Super Mario Brothers, which is like another sort of like, all right, I think the world is ready. So this year we got, a few more video game adaptations that felt like they're taking some more risks in terms of like, we can really make this thing happen. Like people will start to watch these. We're not going to deal with like, there's not going to be like Assassin's Creed, right, in 2015 or whatever. So that's kind of where we're at with this movie. But is it actually worth your time, your money, your ticket? I like this movie. I thought it was okay. What did you think, Will?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not too far off, I guess, from where you are. I found it to be hard to sit through at the beginning. Like the beginning of the movie is rough as far as like the first 15 minutes of the film. It's like,
it's ironically kind of slow.
Right. Well, not only is it slow, but I mean, like the first 15 minutes, like before we really even get to meet Jann, it's just all like commercials. Like it's like literally like a 3-minute ad for Gran Turismo, like with the creator of the game. And then we get like this huge Nissan ad. It feels very, very corporate at the beginning of the film. But as it goes along, it's very, very cookie cutter. Like as far as the story, it's very formulaic, as you were mentioning. It feels very Hollywood, but that's not without its charms. Like, I think there is something to be said about this. Does have kind of like the appeal of something like a Top Gun Maverick from last year, where it is hitting the very familiar beats, but it does have like the humanity and the warmth behind them. And then like the racing scenes have a good bit of a punch to them, and they can get exciting as you're watching them. But I think, I was kind of going back and forth on it throughout, just because, as we were saying, like it just doesn't really, I think, kind of find its own lane, ironically, throughout. Like I kept thinking of like Days of Thunder and like all these other movies that it is very indebted to. And I do think that Neill Blomkamp, he's fine. Like I think he directs it competently, but it does feel very much like he's a director for hire, which is very weird because, I mean, I guess we can talk a little bit about Neill Blomkamp now. Like, it's interesting that this is kind of like a full circle moment, because if I remember correctly, District 9 was supposed to be like a Halo movie, right? Like that was the initial intent, with Peter Jackson involved as a producer. That fell through, and then they decided to kind of like scrape together
Halo,
District
by
9.
the way, like Halo 2 took place in a very similar location in Africa. compared to District 9, which is where a lot of that comes from.
South Africa. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just interesting that he goes from like this original film that's initially based on a video game, becomes its own thing. He verges himself out into being one of the rare kind of like, modern day directors who can get big budget for like original properties. Elysium comes out, and I don't know. So where do you stand on this?
Before you gloss over that, I mean, people were calling him the next Ridley Scott. He was on tap to do the next Alien. I mean, the guy was. He came out of here being like, this is our sci-fi Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan's got the big prestige, like Michael Mann kind of Michael Mantle. And I guess that's a baseball player. But
sure.
It's Neill Blomkamp. I remember the early 2010s. I mean, this guy was the next big deal. He was going to be the guy who was going to make sci-fi blockbusters great again. And then we got, Elysium, which I think is a genuinely bad movie. So was Chappie.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I remember liking Elysium, but I mean, I only saw it the one time in theaters. I know a lot of people. What was that?
I found it very hacky.
Elysium or Chappie?
Elysium. Chappie was just a pure mess. Like just the symptom of a movie where I really think, and to me, this capitalizes Neill Blomkamp for me. He is a much better director than he is a screenwriter. And I think District 9 was like that one great idea he had in him that I just don't think he had it going again with Elysium and Chappie. And it makes me sad that he didn't go to an Alien movie, because I feel like if he had, he probably would have had a screenwriting team with him and somebody to rein him in and something to work off of, kind of similar with the Halo stuff. Whereas I think like when he was trying to do the more original, like Elysium and Chappie, it just completely got away from him in every which way. And then Alex Garland showed up and took him, put him to the side.
Took his mantle, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't disagree with what you're saying. I mean, for me, I did remember enjoying Elysium. It's been 10 years since I've seen that film, so I have no idea if I would like it today. But yeah, Chappie is just one of those. It's fascinating in its weirdness and badness, but it is the sort of film where it's like, for better or for worse, this is the bad film that only Neill Blomkamp can make. Like, I don't know who else would come up with this idea and this series of bad ideas together. But yeah, I mean, he's kind of been on the outs for a little bit, director's jail for a bit. He did a horror movie, I think last year or the year before, called Demonic, which I never watched.
Yeah, 2021. Yeah, COVID movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I remember I was interested in it because, like, okay, it's Neill Blomkamp going back to his like basics a little bit. I was hoping it would get good reviews. It didn't, and I don't think it really made much of a dent. I did want to check it out before this review, but I didn't get a chance. But yeah, now we're here with Gran Turismo, where he's entirely just back with Sony, but entirely for director for hire mode, where he's got a script and kind of just doing what he can. And I agree with you that I think he is better at directing than writing, but I just feel like the script is just so kind of generic and unremarkable and predictable that I don't really think it serves his talents too well outside of the racing scenes and the sort of mentor scenes with David Harbour and who was our lead actor?
They saved
here?
the movie. Yeah, David Harbour saves this movie because I also find the main actor in this, like Archie, say I pronounce this correctly, Archie Madekwe. He's not bad, but I just don't think he has enough charisma to carry this movie, not even close. And David Harbour kind of comes in and like he's a mentor in multiple ways. Real quick, I wanted to say this also about Blomkamp before we move on from that. I think that because you mentioned he was in director's jail, he kind of went back to his roots. He started making a heck ton of short films for years and years and years. Between Chappie and Demonic, he kind of went back to that. And, we should say, like, I think short films and commercials are how he got his start. Like you mentioned the Halo thing, like that started with him doing a short called Halo Landfall a couple years before District 9. And I think the guy has plenty of talent. District 9 was something that he did. Forgot to mention this too. He co-wrote that with his wife. And I think from then on, he started solo writing things. And yeah, I think the evidence is pretty clear to me that the best stuff he's done is when he collaborates with a writer who really can, groove with his directing style, which is very unique and I think is very strong. I think he's good at making, these sci-fi worlds feel kind of lived in and like have like personalities to them. I just think that whatever the case, his voice as a writer is just a bit generic and robotic, I think, to me. And it's also extremely preachy, like in the case of Elysium. In terms of Gran Turismo, I mean, it's a tough movie to like because it doesn't feel like a Neill Blomkamp movie at all. So it's a tough movie to like. It's a tough Neill Blomkamp movie to like and to look at and be like, oh, he's back. Because he's not. Like, he's just kind of doing like, all right, I'm going to be James Mangold now. Or I'm going to, I'm just going to be
Michael
a Ron
Mann.
Howard where I plug in, turnkey franchise.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, he's just entirely director for hire. I thought you meant like who he was emulating. But yeah, I mean,
well, that way too. He is looking at Ford v Ferrari and furiously scribbling things down.
Right.
It seems like.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I do agree because I think the Neill or Joseph Krasinski comparison's interesting because he's another director who kind of comes in for the 2010s. He doesn't come in as far as like getting his own original film. He did Tron Legacy, but yeah, he does like Oblivion, and he kind of tries to cement himself as like this new kind of Ridley Scott as well. But then he goes into like more grounded character piece, and I think he made that transition pretty well with Only the Brave and Top Gun Maverick. And I could definitely
two movies
see
where I think that he was like, I'm gonna transition into Americana. I'm gonna peel out a little bit, stop, get away from the sci-fi stuff. And I always find it interesting when directors are able to transition to something that is more contemporary compared to what they've done before.
But I think in the case of those two films, like, it was very apparent from Oblivion and Top Gun or Tron Legacy that like he was really good at world building as well and kind of creating these high concept universes, and he was able to do that. Like he makes Only the Brave feel very lived in this kind of small town humble way, but he also just has a more keen eye of character and tone, and make you have a little bit more grit and humanity in a way that I think really paid off with that movie, and also just paid off with Top Gun Maverick. Even though
you're just not going to mention Spiderhead, it just doesn't exist.
Spiderhead's okay. I kind of forgot about it until today. I know we reviewed on the show, and I think I was kinder to it than you were at the time. But yeah, it's like okay, But I do think that's something that with this film, I don't really get that same sense. Like I think Neill Blomkamp really kind of put his own spin on the driving scene, especially like there's a couple moments where you like see the transition for like Jann going like into player mode into the like the racetrack, and it's like like stuff like that feels pretty inspired and interesting. But I mean, outside of those little kind of moments, and obviously I think it's kind of hard to make racing scenes like this uninteresting. Like, I mean, I think if you're a competent director, like I believe Neill Blomkamp to be, I think you can pull that off. But I just don't think he really.
I don't know. I feel like it can look easier than it is, honestly, because he adds flourishes here and there that do kind of make this feel, despite what I was saying earlier, do have a bit more of a stamp. It feels more of a stamp based on like the video game tie-in and not Blomkamp's directing style. But I think little things like using Gran Turismo like gameplay mechanics to kind of move the camera out and be like, here's where he is in this line. And like, I get frustrated all the time with racing movies of like, I got to remember this person's car, and like I'm not entirely sure of like where they are and like how many laps they're and really getting a sense of like, well, how is he going to pull this off? And they're like, well, in like the game he could go down this way, and like there are creative like little touches here that I appreciate a lot.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I don't disagree. Yeah, I guess kind of wish he had that sense of inspiration outside of the racing scenes. Like, it doesn't seem like he's as inspired by that. Like, I think that's what keyed him in. And then David Harbour is just kind of doing the heavy lifting here, is actually making a pretty two-dimensional character feel
he's
very
the only
lived
character
in.
who feels like a real person.
Exactly.
For something based on a true story. I mean, one of the first scenes with Jann is like, and I called him Jann earlier, I guess it's Jann. And this is that rare once in a year, maybe once every 2 years where Will pronounces a name correctly and I don't.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure it happens more often. I just don't get caught. But Jann is talking to this, to like the girl he has a crush on. And it is the most screenwriter brained scene I have seen in a little bit, because like literally this woman, beautiful young woman, goes up to introverted Jann, asks him 1,000 questions, and he never asks any questions about her, and she doesn't care. And I'm just like, this is like straight out of Pasadena. Like, what are we doing here? This is absolutely unacceptable. Sure. I was very frustrated. Like the lack of chemistry, the sort of like, I just don't feel these character relationships. It translates to the family a lot. Not because I think, so Djimon Hounsou plays his dad.
Right.
And they have a couple of like, scenes where I'm just like, all right, well, the dad wants him to be like this. And it's kind of weird because the dad is just sort of like, you can't follow your dreams like I did when I went to play soccer, which is not that practical a job professionally. And I was a little bit like, well, that's what you get when you're basing on a true story, right?
To me, what was funnier about those scenes were just like, what are your chances of being, making anything of yourself as a racer? You should go into football, which has like an even smaller chance of success.
Yeah. It really felt like a parody. But then like his family just disappears. Like his mother is played by like the legendary and talented Geraldine Estelle Holly Horner. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that.
Ginger Spice, is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Geri Halliwell. She's the legend, the one and only. Seeing her on the big screen, I mean, there were a lot of races in this movie, but there was only one cameo that got my blood pumping. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So
is this her first movie since Spice World?
Let me fact check for that. I kind of doubt it, but yeah, I'm sure she's been in something.
I don't know. I mean,
yeah, she's been in some stuff. I'm seeing a whole list here. She's been in a lot of TV, but this all looks like TV, so I don't know. Oh yeah, maybe only TV. Wow. Okay. No. Okay. She's been in some TV films, some documentaries. She was in something called Fat Slags the Film, which came out in 2004.
Sounds great.
That was after, yeah, right? That sounds like something that I shouldn't, like a link I shouldn't click. Spice, that's her first movie after Spice World. That was probably in 3 theaters. Oh, she was in Crank High Voltage.
Oh, I love Crank High Voltage.
Who doesn't?
Man.
But yeah, after that, then yes. That's
could you
it.
imagine
those 2 things.
A racing film by Neville, Dean, and Taylor? Oh, boy. That gets my blood going. Yeah.
Oh, that I kind of like, now I can't stop thinking about it. I'm just sort of being like, well, okay, if I think back to Crank and I'm like, imagine if Jann had been played by Jason Statham and it's never addressed his age, but he's supposed to be like a teenager.
I'm a video game player, Dad.
This is you don't understand me. He like punches the wall through.
It's not a video game. It's a simulation game.
Well, Neville, Dean, and Taylor made one of the worst video game related movies of all time, in my opinion, which was Gamer. Truly one of the worst things ever created.
It's okay.
It's not okay. I'm still hurting. I'm still in pain over that entire event. But anyway, the family disappears for like an entire stretch of this movie is very strange to me. Like they just, I don't know, the way this movie plays with time, like apparently a lot of time passes and Jann lives on his own. Like a bunch of things happen after like certain like major plot beats. Like our second act and third act, like there is just a lot of missing material. It seems like they really trimmed this to the bone, like scenes that would have really made it more understandable. Like, where is Jann at? What are the stakes at this point? Because a lot of the stakes over the course of the movie are like him finding purpose, getting his job. But like the big dramatic question behind the whole thing is just, I don't know, it's very nebulous. And they try to start it off with like the schism between him and his family, but they never pay that off. And they're never quite like paying off. Like, why do they never come to his races? Why does he live on his own? Why, where is he at with his girlfriend at this point? I don't know. No one seems to care because I think along the way, they were like, the David Harbour character, he's the character who's working. So like, just do all the scenes with him. And I'm like, okay, that's fine because he's great. So,
yeah, I mean, I had less issue with that, though I did kind of wonder why the brother just kind of phases out of the film. I thought that was just kind of weird.
You never get that moment where they're proud of him, really. Right. And they're just sort of like, wow, you actually did it. And I don't know. It's just, because you could tell a story about that where it's sort of like he proves them wrong, but it doesn't make him happy. But I don't know. The story gets so bogged down by other things that never really comes through.
I was fine with the family not being, because the big thing was just winning his dad's approval, which you can kind of expect is going to come. And I think even you on Letterboxd, it has kind of like a Disney Channel-ish vibe to it.
Oh yeah, it's a Disney Channel original movie.
Yeah,
but made by Sony.
Yeah, and I do think, I mean, even more so than David Harbour, Djimon Hounsou like really has to like work hard to make this character seem real at all, and he's really trying, and I think he's okay. Like I admire him for the amount of effort they put into like make a extremely, like, I wouldn't even say 2-dimensional, I'd say 1-dimensional character have some life to him. But for me, I guess the issue I took more issue with, I should say, was with Orlando Bloom's character, because they kind of established early on that like he isn't really cool with Jann, like in the sense of like he's not as press friendly. Like there's kind of more calculations in play that seems like it's going to set up something bigger, especially when there's like a big crash, and then that just
he's supposed to be
entirely.
The antagonist. They set him up as the antagonist,
right?
And or like the sort of like there's supposed to be some kind of like division between him and Harbour, and then they just drop it completely without
like
any explanation. Really.
Yeah, it's just gone. Yeah, I was assuming that was probably because the real guy had some interference or something. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why that's just kind of dropped.
Because they don't use the real person's name or anything, but I guess like you could look at that and being like, well, it's still kind of tainting the legacy. I don't know. Such that as it is. So the character Orlando Bloom plays is a guy named Danny Moore. He's like a marketing executive at Nissan. It's sort of loosely based on a real man named Darren Cox, a British guy who, sort of the same thing. And I do wonder, if it's one of those things where they had to use a different name. They just wanted a little bit more freedom with how this character. But that's the thing. If you're going to do it that way, it comes across as like when you have that scene of like him not wanting Jann to do it, and it's like this kind of like division between him and Harbour. I feel like that was shoehorned in to sort of manufacture drama, and that's why it was dropped later, because it was never really part of the overall script. It was never like much of a factor. Or they may have had some stuff later in the movie that got poorly focus grouped, and they're like, why is he so mean to Jann? I like Jann. Like stuff like that typically interferes with like what the screenplay might have originally been going for.
I don't know. I guess for me though, I could see the better film here. I just think it needs to be tightened. Like the first half, like for one, this movie's way too long. It's like almost 2.5 hours. I think you could just get like a nice
1 hour 14.
I think you could get like a nice,
or sorry, 2 hours 14. Sorry.
Yeah. I think you get like a nice like 105-minute film from this if you just kind of tighten up the beginning a bit and then just focus more on the camaraderie, mentorship between Jann and David Harbour's character. I just feel like there's just so much.
You don't need the love interest stuff. Get rid of the love. Like it adds nothing whatsoever. Right?
Yeah. I just remember though when I'm watching the film, it's not like I'm disliking it all that much, but like we get to like this point where like Jann gets accepted, and I'm like, okay, I guess we're kind of like whatever, like at the halfway 2/3 mark, we're gonna kind of get this in, but like we still had like an hour and a half at that point. And I'm like, where is this movie gonna go? like how long is this stretch? I don't know. I just feel like the pacing in the first half is just kind of laggy.
A lot of Disney Channel original movies are like that, where like sometimes they feel like two movies pushed together. They'll have like an entire thing going on in the first half, like the GT Academy, and you kind of like you meet all these characters, and you're like, okay, so like is like the whole brunt of this movie going to be him trying to get through the academy, and maybe it's going to end with like his first real race. But then they just kind of like rush through that, and they're trying to cram all this stuff in. And it's weird because it's like, it is such a long movie, but it really is a lesson in how structure is everything.
Right.
It really comes down to like understanding like this is the part of the story where this is the part of the story where he has to learn something. It's like they're trying to like put true events into a screenplay format, and they have to like manufacture all the drama in order to try to make it feel like there's a through line behind all these events. But because it doesn't quite connect, all you feel are the tropes. You don't really feel the sort of connection to like what Jann is going through, which is what a movie is supposed to do.
Yeah, especially considering that the Dance Academy people, I think you're kind of alluding to this, have very kind of archetypal personalities. We got, like the hothead guy who's like kind of like the guy who butts head, right? The bully, but like not
There's
really
Malfoy,
a bully.
There's our Ron Weasley. There's our Hermione. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. There's, of course, the lady. The one like foreign language character that we really learned nothing about. And then the guy with the mustache, the miscellaneous
the guy with the mustache, who was your favorite.
I mean, I did appreciate that creative choice as far as like, at least there's something here. Like, if he didn't have that mustache, I would just not like, he'd just be a total blank slate. Like, I wouldn't able to like pick him from Adam, you know?
The thing I did get is like the whole process of getting into the GT Academy is you have to be really good at this video game. Apparently, all the people who are really good at this video game are super young in their like early 20s, which, okay, I can buy that. Your reflexes are probably better with video games when you're younger. But I mean, shouldn't there be like 14-year-olds up in this business? And like they're all like in great shape. Like they're all sort of, like none of them are overweight. Like
I was gonna say,
wait a second.
Yeah,
what really happened?
Yeah, like you're talking like some like middle-aged like fat dude is just like
exactly. where is where's the person where's Movie Bob? Like what are we doing here?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I thought they'd cross my mind, but I also kind of shoot away. It's like, whatever, it's a movie.
They happen to all be from like the United Nations version of the world. Like instead of it being like 20 people from Tokyo, it's like,
well, that's why I was saying that, like, I didn't want to assume his race, but like, it did think it was kind of funny. It's like, okay, you're just saying that like one, Asian or Japanese man got into this and was like in the top 5, like, and we learned absolutely nothing about him. Like I couldn't tell you a single personality trait about him.
Well, and also, you could try to explain it. Like, I don't know what they really did in the actual academy process. I wonder if it was one of those things where it's just like, oh, you have to be like the best of a certain country, and that's how they did it. But that doesn't make sense either, because like I think there were like multiple people from the UK. So like, I don't know.
I don't think there were multiple people, but I was trying to remember where because I know
the American.
The woman was the American. But I don't know where the hothead. Yeah, she was definitely the American, but I don't remember where the other ones.
It. I don't know.
Yeah,
David Harbour was American.
That is true.
So, anyway, we don't have to go down the weeds of all that. It's an okay movie. We're trashing it a little bit, but it's only because it's like you said, you could see the better movie in it, and like it's one of those movies that kind of falls apart because of like unnecessary mistakes. Or unnecessary in the sense of like easy to correct mistakes that probably happen because movies are very complicated and difficult things to do. And it's just frustrating because like there's stuff here that does click. We mentioned it a lot that David Harbour is actually good in this, but that has more to do with the fact that I think David Harbour is just good at selling like a grumpy mentor figure who, like I wrote in my letterbox, like he won't rest until every Gen Z, like looks at him as a father figure. Like he's just kind of good at like being abrasive, but in a way that makes you think he has your best interests at heart, which I think is just an inherently interesting thing to watch on screen. I think it's why Stranger Things has been very successful with him. I know you only watched like the first season of that, and I think that's where he really cut, shows that off. Like that was his big breakthrough.
I think I watched like 3 episodes of Stranger Things.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I mean he was always my favorite part of it. I mean, I thought, like
he's the best character, still is.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean I think he's a really talented actor. I think he's a great screen presence. He feels like he's kind of fitting that like character actor niche that I really miss, where like someone like Philip Seymour Hoffman, where like they're not like ugly or anything, but not like typically movie star conventionally handsome, but they feel like real people.
He's handsome.
Yeah, and like they feel gruff and they feel sincere, and like they sell lines and they make the stakes present. And yeah, I mean I think he's central to this movie being if it wasn't for him, this movie I think would have been much worse outside of the racing sequences. Mm-hmm. And he really, I think, keys the movie in a lot of central ways. I don't think he does the Herculean effort of like making this an overall redeemed film, but I think he certainly makes it more interesting than it would have been otherwise.
I am glad he's going to be doing more TV stuff soon, because he's been all over the movies. Like he's been in a lot of things. He was in like Black Widow and Violent Night, which I really liked, and he's going to be executive producing a new show that he is the lead in called My Dentist's Murder Trial. And I don't know, I feel like that's always been like a great lane for him. People don't mention this too much, but I mean, he's a classically trained actor. He was in theater. He's been in a lot of like big stage productions. Like the guy is like an actor's actor. And he's such a great case study in like finding like the big success of his career like later in life. And I think it's because, I think that Philip Seymour Hoffman comparison is pretty apt, like, just because I think that like in every role he's in, he just finds that like little angle. It's kind of like in this movie where he finds like the part in the road where he can just kind of like push it forward and do better than you would expect. And I think just a lot of it comes down to the fact that, I think he's one of those actors. He works well with people, and he's just, he doesn't rest on his laurels, from what it looks to me. Like it just looks like he's always kind of like bringing something kind of different, even though at the same time he is one of those people who like he kind of gets typecasted a little bit at this point, we'll say, but that's okay.
I mean, it seems like he seems like pretty humble about, like, he doesn't strike me as someone, I mean, I could very well be wrong, but like just from interviews stuff, he seems like humble about his work, but he takes it very seriously, and he like, no matter what it is, like genre film or drama film, like he takes it seriously and tries to make it work. And I mean, all the best stuff of the film, I think, outside of those kind of fun racing sequences, belong to him. And he's also just great for like reaction shots and stuff throughout this movie.
Yeah, he has great outbursts. I know he's married to Lily Allen, right?
Sure.
Which I'm kind of wondering, all right, when is the David Harbour music career gonna pop off? I'll be there for that. We could table that for now. I think the guy, if he hasn't already, like, I think he'd be pretty sick in like a band or something. Bass, obviously.
Do you think he's like a stern uncle to Alfie?
Let's play the Rotten Tomatoes game.
All
right. So Gran Turismo.
I have faith in you, boy. Like, you're gonna be something. I don't know. He's like Alfie's like an Emmy
nominee. He's a Marlon Brando kind of a type.
Well, I mean, if David Harbour has a Marlon Brando arc, that's definitely going to be something.
Not in terms of the actor's real life. I didn't say Marlon Brando based on a true story.
That's true. Yeah, I don't really quite see the Brando-ness of it, and I mean, I don't know. I don't know if he's quite on the level of Philip Seymour Hoffman, but I think he has those qualities. Like that's something I just really miss from like a marketable actor that I feel like he's really bringing to the fold, especially in a film like this. That I definitely think he is someone I really enjoy watching, and I think he makes this movie work more than it probably should.
Yeah, fair enough. Archie McDuke, I think Madekwe. The only thing I think I remember seeing him in before this was C, the Apple TV show where it's like Jason Momoa and stuff, and he's not very good in that. He's a little bit better in this movie.
What was it called?
C, S-E-E.
S-E.
It's the one where like everyone, it's in the future.
The Apple
and then
show.
Everyone's blind. But Archie plays like one of the, like he's like a young, like kind of older teenage type who can see him and his twin sister.
I totally misheard you. I thought you said C, like S-E-A, and I thought you said Jason Statham. Like where he was like they're it's like not the Meg, but like they're just like trapped on a boat, and just like the two of them are just like, you're going to catch fish.
Like, at least there isn't a big megalodon over here.
Yeah. I don't know why he has an Australian accent, but I admire that. Yeah,
I mean, put me on the spot here. 187 reviews have been counted for Gran Turismo based on a true story. It's actually on Rotten Tomatoes. They have it as Gran Turismo based on a true story. 187 critic reviews. One of them's mine, and I thought it was okay. Will Ash, what is the critic score? What's your guess?
I think most people are going to walk out of this like solid, like 3 out of 5. Like, hits the beats, but you feel pretty roused, I guess, by the end of it. I mean, I think the length will be a deterrent, maybe for like the cinema score later. But as of now, for the critics, I'm going to say 76%.
Lower, much lower. It's 62.
Okay.
Yeah, I think critics are a little bit harsher on it. than I think I would have even predicted. I probably wouldn't have been too far from you. I probably would have guessed like maybe around 70, 68. Yeah, 62 is a little bit low. It's still fresh. But yeah, I think some critics are reacting to a lot of the problems we pointed out, and a lot of the hackiness of the script. But what about the audience score? We have 1,000 plus verified ratings. What do you think?
I mean, I'm going to try 76 again because I feel like they'll probably like it.
Jeez Louise. It's higher, much higher.
Okay.
It's 98%. And I don't find that too surprising.
Whoa.
I do think that this has a lot of crowd pleaser energy. I think the audience that goes into this is going to get basically what they want, right?
I don't know. I mean, 98's insane. Like, I would have thought, like, at the highest, maybe like 94. Like, I didn't think it would be that high.
I do think a lot of it has to do with like it's a self-selecting audience, and I think people might not have the highest expectations, which will probably help. But cinema score,
True.
What do you think for that? Does that change what you were thinking about for the cinema score?
Yeah, because I was thinking it was like between B and B plus, but I don't know. Is it like an A minus?
Higher. It's an A. Has an A cinema score. That is pretty good. That is very, very good. Okay. And we'll finish out with Letterboxd. 41,000 watches. Not bad. What do you think the average rating is on Letterboxd right
now? Probably lower than those two, but I would say, I guess like higher than the critic score. So is it like a 3.4?
It's exactly a 3.4. You finally got one. Look at that.
There you go.
Nice. Well done. Well done.
I would be curious to go back and see how many episodes I predict a film score is 3.4. I feel like I do that a lot, but it worked out this time.
I'll read just one review on Letterboxd that, and not the whole thing because it'd be a little bit too long here. But this is from Raphael Parker Jovine. Said, I've never really been into these Need for Speed, Gran Turismo games. I played them and I remember loving the soundtrack. I discovered so many obscure and indie bands through those and the NFL games. But yeah, it's not fun playing these games when you spend most of the time hitting one wall after another. If it wasn't because I was kind of an ace in Mario Kart 64, shout out, and I actually did pretty good that one time my mom Todd allowed me to drive a car in this big stadium parking lot, though she was about to ess her pants when I got too excited and blah, 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 blah. So yeah, to be honest, after the very mixed reception, I wasn't that excited coming into this movie, and my expectations were pretty low. I've liked the few Neill stuff I've seen, like District 9, which was certainly better than the first film of his I watched, the infamous Chappie, a movie I thought was fine, I guess, though I've never been moved or interested in rewatching it. And then
that's a pretty wild reaction to Chappie. Like, I feel like that's not a film you just are like, yeah, it's a movie.
Yeah. Anyway, his direction and the little stylistic touches he brings are arguably the best thing about the entire movie, especially the way he shoots the racing sequences by designing a translucent car design over the characters when they're playing on the simulator, where he does this in one scene, the rest of the race is within the game, or how he places the ranking position in which characters during a race above the car, like in the games. The action on the racetrack is also wonderfully captured with some great use of drone shots and editing. I saw this in Dolby Atmos, and the sound design and mixing are excellent. It helped get me lost in the action. I particularly enjoy the use of various in-game sound effects throughout the movie. Collectively, they created a sense of immersion that made me feel like I was actually racing, which is saying something for a movie that reminds you over and over that a thing sets GT apart from other games in its realism. So he has more to say, but definitely a fan. 3.5 stars. I think this kind of gets to the heart of like what people are responding to, like that idea of like getting lost in the action. There are, and a lot of stuff we already kind of mentioned, but I think people are just kind of overlooking, the stuff that just doesn't work because they're like, oh, it's fine. It's the racing movie I wanted, and they just had all that other stuff in between. David Harbour's good, so I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, if people have money to spare, it's like a fine matinee if you like want to just like go to the bathroom during some of the family stuff and then just like come in.
Yeah, you can get the large soda for this one.
Right. Yeah, and then you can just like come in when it's like the racing and stuff, and when David Harbour is talking and all that, and I think you'll probably have a pretty fun time.
I did like this review. This is a 2.5 star one. This was like watching a Christian film, only instead of learning to believe in Jesus, the characters learn to believe in PlayStation. That was from Dumbsville.
Yeah, I mean, I think my Letterboxd review was a film that dares to ask, what if gamers weren't evil? And I stand by that. So,
what if gamers were evil?
No, weren't evil.
Oh.
You see, like if they had good hearts and good intentions, and
I feel like
do something with their lives.
Your Letterboxd review would have been way funnier, like at the heat of Gamergate, but it still works.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Letterboxd, those reviews are for me. If other people enjoy them, if people don't enjoy them, that's on them.
I'm just saying we're in the Fortnite era, which I guess that doesn't disprove your point. All right, we'll be back next week, hopefully to talk bottoms. It depends on Will Ashton being able to see it in Pittsburgh if it happens to be available in time. Yeah,
I'm seeing this. I'm seeing it.
Do you have the tickets?
Not yet, but I mean,
I was gonna say never say always. Yeah. I don't know.
Sure,
but I had to see it at a public screening. If they were screening if they were screening it for critics, they didn't invite me. Mm-hmm. I mean, that would have been the right calculation, right? Because then there's no way John's gonna like this movie.
They figured you for a top.
Yeah, oh, there you go. But I figured, hey, opposites attract, right? Thank you so much for listening to the show. We'll be back later this week or next week. From the Internet California, I'm John Gruni.
And from the Internet Pennsylvania, vroom vroom, it's Will Ashton.
Hurry up to the finish line already.